Okay, so today is Monday, December 21st, 2020, the year from hell. And since it's the year from hell, apparently my old high schools are putting on a production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. As you may or may not know, this play features an autistic main character. As an autistic person, I thought I'd watch it. This is me recording my thoughts. This play is based off a book that I read in high school. In retrospect, the book is horrifically ableist and awful to autistic people. So I know the theater directors, I know the people, the teachers making the decisions, have a lot of respect for them. So I'd like to believe that maybe they found some way to alchemically transmute this horrifically ableist source material into something that's actually not that. But I also don't have my expectations set too high. Since I've been talking for about 2 minutes, I might as well get started. I don't know how I feel about the phrase, like, the human experiences portrayed in this journey. Like, I don't know, like, maybe this is me getting too ahead of myself and I'll need to wait and see, but it feels like sometimes it's used as like a dodge to be like, when a character from a specific identity, or particularly with respect to disability, is portrayed in a negative way, then it's like, oh, well, it's human. It's real. It's not, pretty. It's human. And it grinds my gears. Okay, we have a disclaimer. This play portrays difficult circumstances in an authentic manner. Therefore, the performance contains mature themes and mature language. Again, this claim of like humanness, authenticity is coming up. And maybe it'll be like, yeah, that was authentic. But yeah, it just feels like a lot of like prepping coming up in advance in an authentic manner. Like, that's a bold claim. So we'll see. So far, owner of the dog believes the Christopher, the autistic main character's name is Christopher, has murdered the dog, is yelling at him. It's not fun. So we've got a cop interacting with an autistic person. That's never a good recipe. I mean, first of all, ACAB. Police are awful. Police are awful to autistic people. So Christopher is currently stimming and engaging in echolalia, both things that I do from time to time. And the police officer is telling him to not do that. Just a general disclaimer to the allistics out there: don't try and shut down autistic people's stim. Like, if there's a self-destructive stim, or like a harm, like person is harming themselves, then there's like conversations that can be had. But yeah, stimming is not bad, and echolalia is not bad, and yeah, again, fuck the cops. Yeah, don't try to touch autistic people. Just don't touch people without their consent. Sorry, to be clear, what happened is the officer tried to grab Christopher, and Christopher hit him in response. Valid. Fuck the cops. Don't touch people. Fuck 12. So there's this character, Shoban, one of Chris's teachers, and Chris is detailing how people say things without using any words. I'm talking about body language, facial cues. Apparently, a thing that Shoban said either in his presence or to him, was that like a raised eyebrow could mean that I want to do sex with you. When he recounts this, she's like, I didn't say that. And Christopher's like, yes, you did on this date and this time. And she said, it could also mean that what you just said was very stupid. God, the ableist digs. Telling that to a 15-year-old that someone raising their eyebrows could mean they want to have sex with them. Like, that's just fucking weird. Don't do that as a teacher. Earlier, like, there's a point in Chris's monologue where he's introducing himself where he says that he knows all the prime numbers up to something and he knows all nations and capitals of the world. Those could be Chris's special interests. But I'm growing concerned this might fall into the portrayal of like autistics as savants, right? Yeah, this idea that like, oh, it's okay that people are autistic because they have like these superpowers, or are like special geniuses. Like, autistic people don't need to be special geniuses to be worthy of respect and dignity. So it's now being explained that Christopher doesn't understand metaphors. Again, every autistic experience is different. So I don't want to discount that this could be some people's lived realities. But it just feels like a common trope, and like it feels like an holistic person's understanding of what autism is. And especially given that the author did like absolutely no research and is holistic. Okay, here we're getting into the real meat and potatoes. So this is an argument between Chris and his father. Chris wants to find out who killed the dog, and Christopher's dad is saying, you know, it's just a dog. And Christopher responds, I think dogs are important too. Agree. I think dogs are cleverer than some people. For example, Steve, one of Chris's classmates, needs help to eat his food and probably couldn't even fetch a stick. Here's the thing that I really think is going to be the problem moving forward. It is very shitty when one of the most prominent mainstream representations of autism is of a character who is super ableist to other disabled people. And also coupled with this implication that because Chris is autistic, he lacks empathy. Look, I am not a perfect human being. I have harmed people in my life. The idea that any of those harms were because my autism prevented me from having empathy for other people's is ableist horseshit. It's ableist horseshit. Okay, and now it's portrayed that Christopher doesn't really care that his mother died. Because autistic people don't have empathy, right? I don't want to talk too much about like the technical aspects of the production, but this scene, about 26 minutes, and the music's really hot in the mix. And it's making it hard to hear the dialogue. I'm doing okay right now, but one would hope that a play about autistic people would be aware and accommodating of people's sensory needs. Like, if you're gonna do a play about an autistic main character, right, or a play about disability, then, and I know, like, disability is a big umbrella term, but like, this play should be accompanied by discussions about accessibility. There should, you know, be careful mixing of the like background music and the dialogue so that it doesn't trigger people's sensory overload. There should be subtitles. There should be captioning. I don't believe I can turn on captioning, especially when you have the dialogue. You're following a script. Like, it's there. Yeah, it's really hard to understand the dialogue. And even for me, as a hearing person, captions would be very helpful. Also, during this scene, Christopher is talking about how he would be a really good astronaut. There's some things that certainly I find relatable, like enjoying certain tight enclosed spaces. And like certainly it seems like space is a special interest of Chris's. But there's this like implication, like, or this thing, he's like, I wouldn't get homesick and I wouldn't have to be around other people. This idea that like, as an autistic person, Chris doesn't have empathy and like hates people. Like being autistic makes you hate other human beings and want to be away from other human beings. Anyone who knows me, like I'm around here trying to schedule like Zoom get-togethers with like friends from high school, friends from college. It's just, yeah. There's like this particular narrow portrayal of autism, which is scientist, really good at math and numbers and like logic puzzles, doesn't get metaphors, takes things very literally, is a cis man, usually a cis white man, is mean to people because they lack empathy, like thinks of themselves as above other people and like arrogant, like the Sheldon Coopers, the therapist is saying like, oh, because one of the main points, I'm not sure if I went over this, is that Christopher's dad does not want him investigating who killed the dog, and recently got really mad at him and made him promise to stop digging around. And the teacher, Shoban, I believe, is saying, well, if your dad asks you to do something, I'm pretty sure he has a good reason. And that is not a good attitude to take with holistic parents of autistic people. It's just not like abusive parents exist. So I get that this isn't something that the play's necessarily endorsing. But yeah, just like reacting to that in real time. Yeah, I'm sure there's certain things I've reacted to that like the play agrees with me are not good things. And that's why I'm documenting my thoughts like this, so that I can go back and like get a holistic, I have the notes and then I have the holistic view at the end. But sometimes parents tell you to do things because they're shitty and you shouldn't listen to them, and other adults should protect you from them. And yeah. Yep, here we go. Here's the ableism all around. So Christopher is talking about how he is going to be the first person at his school to take A-level maths at his age. Which again, the whole autistic savant thing grinds my gears, but going on, Christopher has just said, all the other kids in my school are stupid. It's just because this is so common, right? Like, sure, there exists some autistic people out there who are jerks because we're human beings, right? Like, but this constant portrayal that autistic people are savants who think they're better than everyone else, who don't have empathy, who don't care about other people, it's just, it's not good. It's just not good. Depictions of abuse, it's, at least somewhat prepared. Again, I read some reviews, I knew some of these things were coming. But if I hadn't been, like, this is the other problem with depicting authentic things, right? Like, that's not, like, what they tried to do was a content warning. And the problem is content warnings need to be specific. Finer detail on the content warnings. That's all. Chris has found out that his mother, who he was told by his father was dead, actually, she has been sending him letters. So clearly she isn't dead. And this current letter is detailing an event where Chris was in a store and essentially Chris had a meltdown. And the mother not sure if her name's been introduced yet, got very upset. And it's just her talking about how upset she was about the meltdown and like how much better Chris's father was and how nice he was about the whole thing, which is like wild considering how abusive we've seen the father be this whole time. And I really don't like where this is going. Look. Abuse of autistic children by autistic parents is so prevalent. And this play is devoting a lot of time to how parts of Chris's autism are negatively affecting his parents. I'm just concerned that like the message is going to be like, look at how difficult it is to be autistic. Look at how hard it is, without being like, no, look at how prevalent abuse is of autistic children. One of the discussion questions should be like, Chris suffered some horrific abuse at the hands of his autistic parents. How can we create a society that better addresses and prevents this kind of abuse and ensures like that autistic people are treated better in society? Like the social model of disability, right? It is the society that disables us, because the society was not just not built for us, but built against us. So okay, it looks like from the scene, it looks like we're about to see Chris have a meltdown on screen. And okay, this, to use the play's language, that is authentic, you know? Some autistic people have meltdowns and that happens, but there's just like the context, right? So there are so many parents who upload videos of their children having meltdowns. Like there's a reason this is like the holistic understanding or perception of autism, is because there's such a voyeuristic lens that's applied. And like, there's something so voyeuristic about this, the way meltdowns are shared without people's consent. And now it's being portrayed in this play. And there's nothing to explain what a meltdown is. Like, the holistic person watching this play doesn't come away with the understanding of what a meltdown is, or the ways in which this autistic person is trying to communicate, and the ways that the holistic parents are not meeting that or responding to that, or are actively harming their child. The only thing that comes away is that autistic people sometimes, when they are upset, get violent. That's the only thing an autistic person watching this play will come away with so far. That autistic people get upset, and then they scream, and they break things. And then they're going to talk about how hard it is to be autistic, because they've done no work to understand what a meltdown is. Okay, so the father's justifying this abusive shit of like hiding all these letters that Christopher's mom wrote to him, and the lie of her being in the hospital and her being dead, because I didn't know how to explain it. It's complicated. I didn't know there's this constant infantilization of Chris. Like, people presume that he won't understand certain things. And it's ableist horseshit. Christopher's dad is now explaining that he's the one who killed the dog, whose name was Wellington. Not sure if I mentioned that. Chris's dad is trying to explain how after Chris's mom went off with Mr. Shears, Mrs. Shears, the owner of the dog, came over and was like, Chris's dad is saying we were really good friends, and I'm assuming that means that like, okay, they were hooking up too now. But like, yeah, this idea that like Chris doesn't understand what an affair is, what love is, what romance is. This idea that autistic people don't understand what romance is. Yeah, given the great overlap between the autistic and LGBTQIA communities, I mean, there exists a romantic an asexual, or aro-ace, or demisexual, demi-romantic, all across the gray ace-aro spectrum, autistic people. And that's not because they don't understand what romantic love is or what sexual attraction is. That is so infantilizing and bullshit. It's like ableist and aphobic at the same time. Again, I'm not ace or aro. As far as I can tell, allosexual, alloromantic, grain of salt. Now here's a real interesting point. Christopher's dad is trying to compare his anger management issues, his struggle with violent outbursts, to Chris's autism. I wonder what the play could have done to make the audience think that that was a valid comparison. And thus the curtain closes on Act 1. What are my thoughts? I've given you plenty of thoughts. This isn't good. This is not, like, if you've just read this book and you watch YouTube videos of autistic meltdowns or of stimming, that does not an understanding of autistic experience make. First of all, I don't think this play should ever be done. I don't. I think if you want to do a play about autistic people, then there should be one written by autistic people. Like, but if you're going to tackle disability issues in theater, you need to talk about disability issues. You need to educate. You need to, like, nothing about us without us. Always. I'm gonna turn this off and take a break. Okay, and we're back. Went, got some food. Got myself a little something to get me through the Act 2. And had a call with a friend to vent some of my feelings and emotions and thoughts. And yeah, so what have we learned so far? We've learned that Chris, our autistic main character, thinks everyone around him is stupid, doesn't want to be around other people, and hates, maybe not hates, but has a general disdain for other people. Chris has no empathy, / doesn't feel bad when bad things happen to people, like when his mom was supposedly dead. We've learned that the people around Chris presume that he understands nothing about romantic relationships or sexual relationships, that Chris's parents view him as high maintenance, or, let's call it like we see it, a burden. Despite loving him very much. They love him so much, really. They keep saying that despite how much they abuse him. Which is, I can verify that's on the money. We've learned that when autistic people get upset, it's not because their boundaries were violated or their needs were actively being ignored, but it's because they're unreasonable or they get upset at random, and when they do, they have violent meltdowns. And that there's a comparison to be made between meltdowns and autism and Chris's father's violent rage. Let's see where we go in Act 2. Side note, because this play is set in the UK and people are speaking with English accents, British accents. Please, someone correct me if I'm mixing up the specific locality. But I wonder if they put more time into getting their British accents down than researching or reading things written by autistic people about autism. So they're asking Christopher if he wants to make a play out of the book he wrote about his abuse and the dog getting murdered and his parents' affair? I mean, okay, this is like pretty meta, right? Because we're watching a play about Christopher potentially turning his book into a play out of a book that was turned into a play. Like, yeah, there's layers. Like, clever, but I don't know. This is very personal. And also Chris says no, and Siobhan says, I think it'd be really good, and is pushing him. And again, when autistic people say no, tends not to be respected. It's a book and it's for me. It's not for everybody, just for me. Okay, this I kind of like. I'm eager to see how the play is going to like shit on it. But yeah, Chris is asserting a boundary. This is his personal work and it's about him. It's for him. It's not for other people. Yes. Now, Siobhan, respect that boundary. Is Siobhan going to respect that boundary? Let's unpause and find out. No, she keeps pushing. And some dude wants to play the cop. Someone wants to play the cop who literally, like, grabbed Chris and was shitting to him. Like, you can't make this up. Some character just stood up and was like, I'd like to play the part of the police officer. Okay, bootlicker. Oh my god, this character, like, so Chris goes up to this other character and is like, can you look after Toby, my pet rat? He needs these kinds of pellets and fresh water every day. And I can't remember this other character's name, I'm sorry. But she's been trying to be Chris's friend throughout this. And she says, why do I have to look after Toby? And Chris says he's going to live with his mother. She's like, I thought your mother was dead. He's like, yeah, father lied to me. Also, father killed Wellington, the dog. And so she's like, so you're going to London on your own? And he's like, yes, I think I'm going to do that. And she's like, why don't we give your father a ring? Why don't we call the dog killer who lied to you? Like, Chris is trying to escape an abusive parent. And maybe this is accurate of like, oh, people don't believe autistic people when they say their parent is abusive. And they just want to, like, Lord knows that's true with, like, the amount of, like, leeway and credence given to allistic parents of autistic people. And how the voices of allistic parents of autistic people are treated as equal and sometimes greater than actual autistic people when it comes to autism advocacy. But, like, shit, like, recognize abuse. My friend, like, help this kid get away from his abusive dog murdering father. Jesus. I'm sure there's been a dreadful misunderstanding. Christopher has made it to the train station and is understandably experiencing sensory overload. It's not an unrealistic portrayal relative to my experiences, at least. It's, yeah. I tend to experience sensory overload with auditory signals, I guess, like noises. The thing I want to point out is that the play has correctly identified that like several overlapping sounds, especially like overlapping talking, when a bunch of people are talking at once, that can trigger sensory overload. And that's what's happening during the scene. I paused to take a break because as an autistic person, it's not a fun time listening to this scene. So I'm not overloaded yet listening to this, but it's still not great. And it just occurs to me that like, there are probably plenty of autistic people for whom this scene would be completely inaccessible, which just drives home the point that this play isn't for autistic people. It's for allistic people. It'd be nice to see more media about autism that's for autistic people. More ableism from police officers. And here's the thing, it's really hard for me to tell. It's really hard for me to tell whether the play's perspective is, look at how ableist society is, look at how ableist the fucking cops are, look at how society treats autistic people, versus look at what an inconvenience this autistic person is on everyone around him. It just feels like the play is really not making it clear. Sorry, Christopher just said, I decided I didn't like policemen so much anymore. ACAB. I'm just muting it because it's another sensory overload scene. So here we go. Apparently, Chris's father is threatening to take Chris's mother to court. The current drama is that Chris, currently living in London with his mother, needs to go back to Swindon to take these A-level exams that have been arranged for him. Chris's mother doesn't think she can do it. She keeps saying it's not the time. She's clearly stressed out. She's saying they can get it postponed, and Chris is saying, no, it can't be postponed. It has been, it's been arranged. They have special proctors and all this stuff. And she just barely stops herself from snapping and yelling at him. And now we have a scene of her hunched over crying. And once again, it really seems like the perspective of this play is, look how hard it is to deal with autistic people. Look at how hard it is for Chris's mother. Look at how hard it is for Chris's father. We'll get into this probably more when I sum up my final thoughts on the play, but this is really bad. This is really, really bad. Stay tuned for a personal anecdote at the end of this play. Yet another meltdown. Chris's mother apparently told him he will be taking his A-level maths next year. Of course, Chris is upset about this. Like, it still feels like, oh, how hard is this to deal with Chris's outburst, Chris's meltdown? But like, Chris had a thing that he worked really hard for, robbed from him, because essentially his father was abusive. And no one cares about that. No one in the play cares about that. Roger, this is Mr. Shears, has just come in and said to Christopher, you must think you're so clever. Don't you ever think about other people? Of course not, because autistic people aren't empathetic, don't have empathy, can't care about other people, all this, everything we've been taught by this play already. Okay, we're getting near the end, but so apparently at this point in the story, Christopher was actually able to take his A-level exams. He currently his mother doesn't come home until 5:30, so he has to spend some time at his father's house until she gets home from work. He goes into his room and he pushes the dresser up against the door so his father can't come in. And yet his father still sits outside the door and tries to talk to him. Yet another example of how Christopher's boundaries are ignored. So Christopher's father, who again has abused him, wants to talk to him. And Christopher says no, he would not like to talk with his father. And of course, Chris's mother comes in and tries to say, it's okay, I'll be here. And no, respect Chris's boundary. Don't force abuse victims to interact with their abusers. The first thing Christopher's father says is things can't go on like this. Can't go on like what? with you not having access to the child you abused, they can and should go on like that as long as Christopher wants them to. It's all about him. It's like, I don't know about you, but this just hurts too much. It's all about, see this, we'll come back to this, but this is all about everyone else's feelings. This play isn't about Chris's feelings. It's about Chris's father's feelings, Chris's mother's feelings. It's about the neighbor's feelings. The feelings of the bystanders and strangers who interact with Chris. The abuser says, you have to learn to trust me. I can't make this shit up. I really can't make this shit up. Oh my God, this is horrifying. So Chris's father says he doesn't care how long it takes. He's going to keep trying to get Chris to trust him, which isn't good. It's not admirable. It's completely disrespecting Chris's boundaries. It's prioritizing Chris's father's needs over Chris's needs. And now Chris's father's trying to say, let's call it a project and we need to work on this together. No, you harmed Chris. You need to repair that harm. And Chris may never forgive you. And then you need to move on. So this is it's like, he's saying, it's a project, we have to work together. You have to spend more time with me. And I have to show you that you can trust me. No, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And here we go. So Chris's father gets him a dog as a present. Let me make something perfectly clear. Giving people gifts when they don't consent to them is not good. It is not nice. It is a violation of people's boundaries. And this idea that's so prevalent, that harm can be repaired by giving gifts. Also, Chris doesn't even get to keep the dog. It's just, this is so horrifically abusive. So Chris, the gift to the dog isn't something that Chris gets to take with him to his mother's flat because the flat's too small. So in order for Chris to even interact with this gift, he has to come to his father's house. This isn't a gift, this is manipulation. This is manipulation, this is emotional abuse. We call it like we see it. There is this like voyeuristic storytelling of inspiration around disabled people. Like, look at what this disabled person was able to do. Isn't this amazing? These kind of videos get a lot of traffic on Facebook, and I'm sure people have relatives that share them all the time. What Chris just got an A star on his A levels. And he's talking about his future goals. He's going to take the next higher level of maths and get an A star. He's going to take A level physics, and then he's going to go to university, and he's going to take his dog's handy and his computer, and he is going to do well and become a scientist. And he says, I can do these things. I can do all these things because I went to London alone. And like, did we forget him going to London alone was him fleeing abuse? It's not some feel-good story about look what he could do. And it's not like, look at how amazing he overcame the obstacles. He was running from abuse and had to do so in a society that actively harms him, that actively disables him. And it's painted as a feel-good story. It's painted as proof of Chris can do anything. This play centers entirely the feelings of autistic people, the feelings of neurotypical people writ large, the feelings of able people. And at every chance it gets, minimizes and ignores or fails to fully disavow the abuse heaped upon the autistic main character. So wait, so they did turn it into a play? Wait, so they're saying like, so Chris is listing off these things, he's like, I wrote a book, and then Siobhan is like, I know, and we turned it into a play. Chris explicitly said he didn't want it turned into a play, that it was personal. Like, So they did anyways? Like, they made this tongue-in-cheek joke at like, look, this is the play. This is like, is it the real thing or is this the play of what happened? And in doing so explicitly, again, ignored Chris's boundaries. Okay, so this is after everyone's bowed and they've done the curtain call. Now there's this extra section where Christopher is demonstrating how he solved one of the questions on the A-level math exam. And once again, the music is just really hot in the mix, so I can't fully hear Chris's explanation. Which, you know what would have been great? Captions. I like, look, audio mixing is not easy. It's not trivial. Yeah, because it's not trivial, a good thing to do is to caption things for accessibility, and that should be the norm. Okay, so he solved the equation and everyone's cheering and there's confetti. Like, what's this tone? This is such tonal whiplash. This is such, like, we just watched this whole play about the abuse and ableism Chris faces. And heaped in with a bunch of like actively ableist ideas about autism portrayed through Chris's character. And then at the end we've got confetti of him solving this maths question. It's God, I have a little bit left. Okay, so the director's notes. One of the things it says, I chose this piece because I love the message of Christopher's journey. What is Christopher's journey? Are you talking about literally the physical journey of him going to London, again, to escape abuse? Like, it seems like most of the play is not focused on Chris's character, but on everyone else around him and how they react to him. Is it his journey in like, quote unquote, overcoming abuse? Does the play acknowledge that these things were abusive? Is it about him doing well on his A-level maths and getting an A star despite being abused? It's just, I thought this would be short. I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, absolute props. This obviously was not easy to put on during a pandemic. And I commend all of the students for that. And I commend all of the staff, Wendy, E. So like, yeah, these critiques come out of love and out of a place of wanting better media about autistic people. Here we go, discussion questions. We invite you to start a conversation about the messages in this play. This is important because this will tell us what the intended messages of the play are. Question 1, what did you know about autism before seeing this play? Recognizing that autism is a wide spectrum, has your perspective changed? Like, the word autism isn't used in the whole play. And the reason is because Mark Haddon, who wrote the book, eventually backpedaled and was like, oh, it's not really autism. When people called him out on his shitty ableist book. What do people get about autism from this play? Like, again, all the things I said, lack empathy, think they're better than everyone else, don't, care when their mothers die, don't understand sex and love, when they're upset, are prone to violent outbursts, just like an abusive father. I'm curious. I am genuinely curious. I'm hoping that some of my autistic friends saw this play because I'm genuinely curious what their takeaway was. Oh boy. This is going to be a really ableist question. In this play, Christopher's family experiences a lot of relational challenges because of his disorder. What did you learn about hardships that families with autistic members may face? How does each member of Christopher's family contribute to resolving these challenges? Remember every time I said that the play was focusing more on how Chris's family reacted to him than on his own feelings? All the times that the play, the characters actively disrespected Chris's boundary, when the play itself is supposedly built off of, like, if the play is the play that was made out of Chris's book, it's actively built off of disrespecting and violating Chris's boundaries. This is essentially blaming Chris for his family abusing him. Experiences a lot of relational challenges because of his disorder. No, Chris's family and others abused him because they're ableist. I promised a personal anecdote. Here we go. I've told the story about 1,000,000 times, never gets any easier. So, some of you may know, I used to live with a person out here in LA named Tam Wynn. Tam and I met sophomore year of college at St. Olaf College, and we'd been friends for 7 years. I was out here about to start my PhD. She had moved out here to do her master's. She was 1 year in. We decided to live together. Around December that year, I started questioning my gender, and she was the first person I told. And she did not react well. It was a bunch of evasive questions and dismissive comments. And at one point, I was on the phone with her, and again, going back and forth about my gender. And I confessed that, like, you know, sometimes I do wonder, like, how is it possible that I experience all these marginalized identities at once, you know? Possibly being trans. I mean, now I know I'm trans, I'm non-binary, boop. Being bi, autistic, and struggling with mental health. Her response was, wow, I can't imagine having all those things on my plate. See, this is why I don't want to have kids. Because they could end up with all these issues, and it'd be really difficult and expensive and hard for me to deal with, and I don't think I could do it. How would anyone who watches this play come away with anything different than what Tam said to me? How would anyone who reads this question come away with anything different than what Tam said to me? How does each member of Christopher's family contribute to resolving these challenges? They don't! They just bulldoze his boundaries and call that resolving challenges. They use emotional manipulation. One of my fears is that people can just treat you this way. People can just treat you the way that Tam treated me. And Autistic, neurotypical, cis friends of the person will be, oh, that's so awful. I'm so sorry she treated you that way. But not care enough to do anything about it. But not care enough to try and incentivize people who do ableist, transphobic harm to take accountability for what they do. There's no restorative justice. No one holds Christopher's father to account. And I'm like, look, you can't force anyone to take accountability. They have to choose to do it themselves. All right, and if they don't, then they shouldn't get access to the person they harmed. Just because the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Like, fuck familial relationships. I know I'm biased. But, like, look, I love my brother. Colton and I are so tight. But that's because we treat each other well, and we respect each other, and we treat each other with care. We care about each other, and that's reflected in how we interact and how we... It's not just because we're related. So phone ran out of storage, spent 5 days editing down the footage, and this is me coming back and answering the last 2 discussion questions and then giving some final thoughts. Question 3, can Christopher do anything? Why or why not? I don't know random probably autistic person who wrote this question, can you do anything? Like, right now, can you play a 7 against 11 polyrhythm? Like, what is this question? It just, like, this focus on what disabled people, like, can or can't do as, like, a measure of their worth or humanity. It's like, where, like, some people in an attempt to, like, defend disabled people, I guess, will assert, like, no, disabled people can do anything. It's like, no, disabled people are like human beings who can do some things and not others, and have needs and skills, and they might have support needs in an area that you don't, or like, it's just, the whole framing of this question is bullshit. Question 4, I can't quite remember, since it's been a few days, the streaming expired, so I can't actually go and look at the play anymore, but it was something along the lines of, like, what can you do to learn more about autism and how it positively and negatively affects individuals and their families? Which, okay, a couple things. One, that families bit again, like, we can't even just talk about autistic people without somehow bringing up their autistic family members. Then this, and this has been present in some of the other questions too, this, like, what can you do? Which, of course, the question presumes that the person reading it is autistic, is neurotypical. Like, this idea, this presumption that no autistic people would be watching this play, that, like, there are no autistic people in the ViSTA audience. Like, hello? I mean, again, like, even if not me, like, you have to just know that we exist at your schools, right? Like, you do know that, right? Okay, finish the play, finish the discussion questions, and actually put on makeup for the grand finale. This is also the too long didn't watch for people who didn't want to watch an almost hour-long video. So what are my final thoughts on the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime, which is way too long of a title, so I'll be calling it the Night Night Doggo Play moving forward. The Night Night Doggo Play claims to be an authentic human representation of the autistic experience, but it is neither an authentic portrayal nor treats its autistic character with any modicum of humanity. Through our autistic character, Christopher, it is portrayed that autistic people lack empathy, don't care about bad things happening to other people, think we're better than everyone else, don't understand sex or romance, and are prone to random, violent meltdowns. But it's okay that we're heartless monsters, because we're mathematical and or scientific savants. Christopher's boundaries are constantly violated by his parents, teacher, the police, shocker, and others around him. I forgot to even mention the scene where, after reading Chris's book without his consent and taking it, Chris's father slaps him during the ensuing argument. The play seems to be both simultaneously saying that this kind of behavior is definitely abusive, and yet that Christopher is expected to keep spending time with his father and learn to trust him again, despite the abuse. This abuse is portrayed as relational struggles stemming from Christopher's autism. The fucked up conclusion of Night Night Doggo is that autistic people are to blame for the abuse they suffer at the hands of autistic people. This play and the discussion questions have undoubtedly done tremendous harm to the ViSTA autistic community. The presumption made in the discussion questions that no autistic people were in the audience is even more of a sign that some tough conversations need to be had and the harm needs to be repaired.